Hi guys, and welcome back to TomTalks. And we have got another Mercury Prize review. This will be the final one that comes out before the awards are announced. I will be doing reviews of the other records, so stay tuned for that, as well as my video reacting to the winner. But today we are looking at the debut album from jazz and classical pianist Joe Webb, Hamstrings and Hurricanes. Not a lot of information about Webb. Apparently he's inspired by, well, of course, jazz music, but also Britpop as well. It's not something I saw in this record, but it's interesting to note. Also, you've got Will Satch on bass and Sam Jesson on the drums here, who feature quite prominently throughout this piece. This is not Webb's first full-length project. In 2022, he released Both Sides Now with Adrian Cox and Summer Chill, but Mercury Prize nominee now, so I think this will give him a bit more notice in the record industry and in the general populace. And I've got to say, this is a very good piano record. I do enjoy it, and we'll get into why. We start off with Beth Yun Gal, which means what is calling. Joey is Welsh, so a few of the track titles are in Welsh. My apologies, my Welsh, I don't speak Welsh, so it's probably not going to sound great. Feel free to lambast me in the comments for it. But it's this very pounding piano sound. It feels very much like a late night jazz club setting. It's funky. You've got a bit of cymbal here from Jesson, the lightly strummed bass here, and the piano, as does on a lot of this record, changes its speed and intensity throughout. And towards the end, he's really showing off. He's just like, yeah, these are my piano skills. Look at me, I'm great. And it's a really good start to the record. And we then transition very nicely into Pip, which feels very much like the part two here. Cymbals are a lot more intense though, so you're hearing a lot more of that sound. The piano, it's a bit more rhythmically played, a bit less freestyly. It's got this more upbeat, dancey sound to it. Mixture of these more deep plonks and a bit of that freestyling as well. Less freestyling, but there is a bit of freestyling here. The bass is very quiet in the background. Like, you can hear it if you really pay attention, but it's the piano is the star of the show, and the cymbal is very prominent here. And it's very expressive at the end, much more intense plonking. And yeah, it's a nice carrying on of that track. 2850, the cymbal is a lot more toned down here. You can hear the bass a little bit more, but again, the piano is very much the star of the show. There's a bit more of a rhythmic pattern here to it, which changes it up a bit. You can also hear Pip in the background, keeping to the late night jazz club sort of vibe. It's a short but sweet moment with some more intense plonks here and there. Good track. We then get 100 Years of Bill and Lil, which is a lot more classical piano piece. It's more mellow and melancholic in its sound. There's much less freestyling and more sticking to a pattern. There's some quite intense plucking on the bass. This is one of the more prominent moments you hear from the bass. Particularly though in the middle, there is a bit more expressiveness, but it's quite calming, and it's very subtle. And there's some subtle drum playing that comes in at the end. It's a nice change of pace, a nice little classical piece. I'd enjoy it. Some Jesson is basically like the epilogue to this track. It's basically Jesson with his intense drum playing. It's very expressive. It's a nice little closer to that track. We then get Curveball, which returns to the more jazzier sound, which I guess is a curveball in a way. The piano playing is a lot more expressive. The drums are a lot more present on this track. The intensity builds, giving it this very dancey rhythm. The bass also comes in quite nicely at the end. I think that's a nice touch to the end of the track. And yeah, it's another fun little jazzy piano piece. Brud Wid Carried, which basically the first word there means dream. And this more melancholic piano sound, classical, does feel a bit more like a dreamscape kind of sound. There's some very subtle percussion in the background. It's not there to dominate, it's there to just give a bit of a kick to this song. Some like very big plonks, and the intensity changes throughout. There's some real deep notes hit to give some variation from the sticking to the pattern, which is happening on these more classical pieces. It slows down a little bit in the middle, and then it picks up the pace again. There's these really deep, sharp notes towards the end to sort of close things off nicely. It's another good classical piano piece. We then get the title track, which, I don't know, there's just something about this track that doesn't stick out to me. It feels a bit more all over the place. It's very expressive, and there is some very good piano playing, but it just feels a bit all over the place here. There's these very intense high notes at the start. It returns to the more jazzy sound. It reminds me sort of like the style of piano you'd hear in like Red Dead Redemption 2, or in like the Wild West era, like bars and stuff, which I don't mind that sound. But with this, it's just a bit all over the place. Some of the plonks just sound a bit they don't really work for me. It's the most expressive track here, but I think the lack of sort of rhythmic structure holds this track back a bit. And the drums and bass come in on the second half, but they do feel more just kind of thrown in there than they do on other tracks here, which is disappointing, but it's the one moment here where a track doesn't do it for me. Waiting in Ebb feels like, you know, they're just sort of keeping the motions until the next track comes in. The jazzy piano is a lot more subtle. There's a nice drum pattern here. It's this one note that just keeps coming in, which gives the track a bit of a bounce, a bit of oomph, and this just persistent rhythm. And it's a short but sweet moment. It's nice. It fits into the sort of feeling here of like being at a piano concert and hearing what's going on. Newcastle Full feel, really intense piano pattern. I really enjoy him freestyling here, but to a pattern, holding the notes where appropriate. The subtle drums, cymbal and bass are very nice in the background, and they fit in with what's going on here. The speed and the pattern changes throughout. It's very intense in the middle, and it will slow down a bit, and then it'll pick up the pace again. The tapping of one note at the end as like the intensity builds, and you hear these more scratchy plucking of the strings on the bass. It's a really nice way to close this track, and I do really enjoy this one. Some days it's a short little jazzy piano moment, very subtle percussion and bass. You know, it's only there for a little bit, but it's a nice little interlude. Squeeze Me is the penultimate track here. The piano playing is a lot more energetic here. It goes back to that more sort of old school sound that we heard on the title track, but there's a bit more of a pattern and a rhythm to it here, which I like. The intensity and the pace of the playing, it rises and it falls. It's a nice moment, and it's a much more thought out track than the title track in terms of that very old school Wild West style piano bar playing. And then we get Here, which is about longing for home, and again the more somber piano melody fits the sort of title of the track here. It's something I'd hear my nan play on Classic FM, I think. Not play as in play the piano, but listen to. My dad's not a pianist. The very smooth percussion takes the lead here. It's the same pattern throughout, but it just takes hold of the track, and it's a nice moment. We also get a bit more of the from the bass, and as the track goes along, you hear a bit more of it here. Piano playing gets a lot more expressive as it goes on. He's like going up and down the piano. I love the rhythm to this track, and I think it's a really great closer to the record. It's potentially my favourite track here. It's just the most standout, and yeah, it closes the record off nicely. Hamstrings and Hurricanes is a really good piano, classical, jazz, old school West. I don't know what the polka might be the term for that style of piano playing. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a really enjoyable record. In terms of things I don't like, I've already mentioned the title track, but also I think it doesn't vary up the sound quite as much as I like. My favourite jazz is when there's lots more going on. There's a lot more in terms of the sound, in terms of the structure, in terms of like the instruments on display. This feels very much like a just very expressive piano playing, a lot of freestyle, a nice use of bass and percussion here. It's very good. I enjoy the record. Are there better jazz albums there? Yes, there is, but very good record. And for what it is, it does the job very nicely. And overall, I'm feeling like a 7.5 to an 8 maybe. It's a very good album. It does the job. Joe Webb is a very good pianist. You know, not much more to say than that. But what are your thoughts on Hamstrings and Hurricanes by Joe Webb? Am I being a bit harsh? My lack of knowledge of piano playing coming through? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to like, make sure to watch the other Mercury Prize reviews. And next time I speak to you, we'll be talking about the winner. But until that time, this has been another TomTalks.